Guys, it's time, after maybe a year of use, of unuse, to bring back the Nacet blade. It's got 450 uses on it, and I had to keep track on a different piece of paper from the original wrapper here. We'll look at that in more detail in a second. But this is Austere August, and some of us use the same gear all month. And I'm going to use the same blade all month. Matter of fact, I'm going to use the same blade that I started Austere August with a few years ago. Haven't shaved consecutively with that blade since then, but I've done runs with it at various points. We're going to use the same setup all month. That Nacet blade, chiseled face, midnight stag, and this is kind of the old design of the tub. Same OG mixture, formulation, if you will. We're going to use this Semogue Owners Club with the Taj handle. It's a boar brush. It's been soaking for several minutes. I am looking forward to putting a lot of uses on that one this month and seeing how it might change. And we do have the accompanying Midnight Stag Splash and EDP. I'm a big fan of the scent. Stephen Joyner of Southern Witchcrafts issued a Southern Stag challenge years ago, and I accepted. I'm really glad I did, because I'm a big fan of the scent, and my family's not. But we're going to be using the blade in a razor that has used it before successfully. I think maybe around the 200 range, 200 to 275, something like that. Maybe this one was a good razor. The catch is I haven't shaved for a while, except for yesterday. And so I didn't get a chance to see if this is a good razor for the Nacet right now. It may not be, but we're going to commit to it through August anyway, and see how it goes. This is the 68 gap stainless steel from Timeless Razors, and it's an open comb base plate. And this, of course, you can see the grooved top cap. This is their knurled handle, which is terrific. It does feel a little bitey right now when it's dry, but when it's wet, it feels great. You don't even notice that, and it's not going to slip out of your hand. And so let's take a quick look at the blade before I put it in. And I'm going to say right quick that this open comb head, I get terrific smooth shaves from the solid bar version of this 68. But the open comb, if I put a fresh blade in it, it's way too aggressive for me. There's something that happens when they make it an open comb that really steps up the aggression to a level that I don't enjoy, unless I'm using a blade like this. It's had tons of uses on it. It's much more smoothed out than usual. So we started out, and when I started using this Nacet blade, I didn't know it was going to go this far. I started using it for an Austere August, and probably with Williams mug soap, I think, and the Blackland dart. And I started keeping the dots on the little envelope here. And so there are 300 dots if you add them all up on this little paper envelope. And of course, you can see I was starting to run out of room. And so I started keeping track on this sheet of paper. So 300 from the paper envelope, 400, and then 50 is where I am now. And this card folded in half, just an index card, is where I've been keeping the blade ever since I started using it. And so here's the blade. In one of my other videos, I actually did a close-up of the etching. Oh yeah, I etched it with my little etcher. Yeah, see, you can see the N and the 1 down here that I etched in there. And that's because I did put some Sharpie dots on here at one point, but it was looking like they were fading away as as things might do with age. Yeah, Yeah, actually, you can see one of the Sharpie dots right there. And if you look back through, I think I missed one video for this kind of, this blade, but all the rest of those 450 shaves have been recorded on video. And so you can watch as the dots, as I show you the dots, how they change, that sort of thing. But also, at one point I dropped the blade. You can see down here the way the edge glints a little differently. I dropped the razor head and the blade was in it, and it bent it a little bit, and I bent it back some, but it's not perfect, and so that's kind of another identifying mark. But I made sure to put some etching right there, and if I hold the light right, the etching shows up. That way the blade can be kind of identified, because there are guys out there who just don't believe that I have used a blade this many times, and if they really don't, okay, that's up to them. In a sense, it doesn't matter. I mean, it might be cool if there was some kind of Guinness World Record, but I have no idea what it would be. Or even if my videos would constitute some kind of valid record, authentication. All right, because it could be faked, because like right now the razor is out of view, so I could have a copy of this exact razor and have a different blade in it and be using it. So that's all right. In terms of super authentication, it may never happen. That's okay. We're just enjoying the shaves. Why am I shaving this many times with a blade? Great question. Get asked it a lot. Number one, my standards are if it ever is unreasonably uncomfortable, or it gives me it takes an unreasonable amount of time to accomplish the shave. I think I've had to move up to like 5 passes to get the beard cut properly. And so that's, I don't think that's unreasonable, because I'm enjoying my shaves. This soap, this brush is really fun to use. It feels terrific. It's therapeutic almost, and it's a nice break. And so I don't mind 5 passes, you know what I mean? And then does it give me reasonable closeness? Obviously, if I walk away with some stubble that's, not kind of standard, then it may be time to retire the blade. Another thing, a little tip, a little bit of trivia, I've never flipped the blade. That etching side that I showed you, that's pointing toward the handle, and I've done it. I actually had one mistake. I had not shaved with it for a while, and I forgot actually which way I oriented the blade, and I made a mistake and I shaved with it upside down for one shave, but all the rest of those shaves have been with it oriented in one direction. And I think that's just something I decided to do when I first started it, just for grins. And I think one thing I've proved is that flipping the blade just doesn't really matter all that much. There are some guys who religiously flip the blade, and they may only use it 6 times, and they'll make sure they alternate, or something like that. And I think I'm kind of proving if I can go 449 uses without flipping the blade and still get decent shaves, then I don't think flipping it is all that important. Also curious as to what happens when this side A that I've been using the whole time, what's going to happen if it starts to not be effective. What's going to happen when I flip it over? Well, that one time I did flip it over by accident, it gave me a terrific shave. So what if I get to 500 and I decide it's time to flip it? And what if it gives me 300 more shaves? I have no idea. I have no idea. We'll talk about more things about using such a blade for so long as we go. So I'm going to get my face wet. Prior to last year's Austere August, I won a charity auction for this set of soap. I believe it was rchewbacca, who had used it the previous year, and he found and had been using this kind of old school version, and so I won it. There were some guys who were trying to buy it, and they were saying they were gonna buy it so that its awful stink could just be destroyed and no one would have to smell it anymore. And I couldn't let that happen, even if it was a joke. And so I bought it. And so we're going to be using it today. Maybe about halfway up the container is the current capacity, the current fill. And so let us get the brush as we build up some moisture here in the tub. As the month goes along, you'll probably see the number of load time that I need to do. You'll probably see that reduce. But for now, let's try 20 seconds. Shake out a lot of the water so that it's kind of a lightly wet brush here. And 20 seconds starting right there at the 05 mark. Just kind of medium pressure. And we can kind of immediately see some suds because of the water that was in the soap. And we're going up to the 25-second mark. We'll see if that gives us enough lather to do the job. Doesn't take a lot. This is we call it kind of the OG formula of chiseled face. It's not top tier. We'll rinse the sides of the container off there in case we had some overflow. It's not top tier, but it's good. It gets the job done nicely. It's slick. If you push a lot of water into it, when I say it's not top tier, if you push a lot of water, you're not going to get it's not going to hold on to its creaminess quite as nice as like the sterling mutton tallow that I used yesterday, or some of the other ones like Barrister and Mann, Declaration Grooming, that sort of thing. And I think because of that, Chiseled Face did try a new formulation. They called it Silk Tallow in the past couple of years, and it definitely lived up to that kind of premium, top tier base. Unfortunately, it takes about 3 times as much product to get that job done, and so I don't think that Silk Tallow base, because of that, is really going to take off. Some guys, especially the face lathering guys, get a little frustrated with it. See, it's kind of old school. You can see how it kind of has a high structure, and as its dryness there, and there's some bubbliness right that way, and that's just fine. In terms of it'll still calm down as we add water. And that's 20 seconds of loading, and as you can see already, we've got tons of lather. And these, look right here. We do have a slight, we got a breakage right on the end there. I was going to show you what splits look like if that had one, but it doesn't. So right now I'm going to press hard a little bit just to make sure that we get soap up into the root of the knot, because we know there's water there. We don't want that water to flush out the rest of the lather later on during the shave. I'll have to look back at my Austere August data from the past and on this very soap, and I'll be able to see the time, the loading time. I'll be able to see it change from the start of the month until maybe it got down to 7 seconds, because of the residual slickness, the residual moisture that was in the soap tub, It just makes it easier for the brush to pull the soap up and get it on the brush. Already we're starting to have a more creamy appearance. Oh, that great Stag smell coming through. It's not super strong. This is an older soap, of course. We're going to end up with a lot of lather. I definitely wanted to do a shave prior to Austere August because this Nacet blade does not like to be used on more than 1 day of growth. I also don't shave against the grain, even with most of the time with a nice fresh blade and a good razor. Most of the time it does still irritate my skin, give me cuts and that sort of thing. And so it's possible I would have had to retire this blade sooner if I did do against the grain shaving. All right, tons of lather. And we still have some creaminess to it. And I'm going to add just a little bit more water, but I think we're pretty close. This is not one that you can push a ton of water into. I have still enjoyed Chiseled Face, even though I mentioned that this base is not top tier in my opinion. I've still enjoyed a good many of their soaps, just because their scents, the scents that they choose, are just tremendous. Very kind of masculine type scents, gearhead, things like that. Stag and Sherlock. Sherlock is amazing. A lot of the scents they come up with, I really, really enjoy, and they're unique, and so I don't mind using a base that may not be top tier if the scent that I'm getting is just so good. Gonna face wet one more time. All right. This boar brush is one that at one point I had 60 uses on or something. Decided to try to accelerate its maturation, and the splitting of the tips, that sort of thing. Decided to accelerate it with a hairdryer technique. I've documented that on my channel. I'm trying to be conservative with it so I don't mess up the tips, cause premature breakage, because after all, we want those tips to split and stay together, stay attached to the main shaft. Otherwise, if they break off, then it's not a split tip anymore. You don't have that softness coming at you. I've got so much lather, I can afford to take little chunks like that and just throw them away. Brush is very comfortable. I did 10 hairdryer treatments, I think. At least. And I could definitely tell a difference when I used it before the treatments and then after. It's definitely helping more tips to split. And so part of the reason I chose this brush for this month of shaving was to watch it change, get even better perhaps. I still feel just a hint of wiriness, but then it's just super soft and comfy. All right, folks, here we go. Use number 451. At one point, I may have told people it was at 460 because I thought I went 10 more shaves, but apparently, looking at the card, it's got 450 dots, so that must be the count. So 451. So I'm shaving with this blade just to prove, to underscore the point that it's a myth that says you can only shave with a blade 3, 5, 8 times. There are people who propagate that and recommend it to new shavers when it's just not true. I'm happy to report that this is pretty comfy right now. So it looks like using this razor is going to work out this month. I've done runs where I did a month of this use or 40 uses or something like that, and by the end I'm definitely missing putting a fresh blade or a young blade in a razor. But yeah, I'm really surprised it's not really tugging very much at all. Very minimal, even by other people's standards. But to get blades to last, if you're going to go to 100, sometimes you have to put up with a little tugging. Some people want to be that century club, you know, get to one blade to 100 uses. And I think it's fun to do. I haven't done it with any other blade other than this one. When you use up your time putting miles on this one, then you kind of don't have time for other blades. Okay, we did take down some growth, of course, but not a ton of it. I still feel plenty of stubble, and that's just what you get with this kind of age of the blade. It's comfortable, and that's just why I have to do a few more passes. But when you have brushes that feel as good as this, and soaps that smell as good as this, and a creamy lather that you enjoy using, then 5 passes is just not really a big deal. I'm going to do cross grain now. Always keeping a light touch, whether it's an old blade or a new one. Some guys find that when they do a long-term shaving type strategy, that they find that they press harder to get the razor and blade to work properly. And then when they switch back to something more fresh, then they kind of cut themselves. But I don't do that because my technique is a very light, moving it across your face with very light pressure, just enough pressure to keep the blade on your skin. That's pretty much it. A little quick rinse. I'm glad to say that because of my efforts, I've definitely seen guys give blades a little bit longer of a chance. And that's great. Another reason I'm doing this is to show people who might be low in the budget department how you can use a blade for a longer time if you want to. And there are definitely, college students out there. I've personally spoken to people who just have very low budgets for shaving, and it's if they can make a soap and a blade last a long time, then that helps them out, right? And so I'm a big fan of that. Just putting out the idea that they might be able to get a blade a lot of people can make a blade last a month without too much trouble. But one of the secrets to, as I do my third pass here, I'm doing cross grain again. One of the secrets to this, I call it marathoning. Some websites use hypermiling. You can go to sugardaddyShaves.com, and I have a marathon secrets page if you're interested in some of my observations over the years with what it takes to make this happen. A couple of the key things are good razor technique. That light touch I mentioned is a big part of that. Another key is good lather technique. I have a lot of water. I like to use a lot of water in the lather that I'm using to make it just very slick. The more slick, my theory then is that's the less wear on the blade. All right, very good. Fourth pass. And I can definitely feel on my face the beard reducing. The Stag is a very polarizing scent. Not recommended for new shavers or shavers with less than masculine sensibilities. Or non-masculine sensibilities. Another thing I do as I make a blade last a long time is it can start either tugging a good bit, or it can start being kind of ineffectual with a certain razor. And so I find that while I was able to start the blade off using a mild razor if I wanted to, I kind of have to stay away from mild razors once the blade gets to a certain age. Increase in the aggression of the razor as the blade ages more. And then sometimes it's really funny, I switch back to something that's more medium aggression and it still works. Sometimes the blade just changes that way. I wish I had some kind of super close microscope so I could watch this blade change. And as you can see with that light touch, the passes just don't take very long. With the slick lather, they're fast passes, and so it's just not really a big deal. These shaves aren't really taking longer than my normal shaves. You can see the lather's holding on just fine, not dissipating or anything like that. And I think this is the 5th pass, and I think this will be the last one. I think maybe 6 passes might fall into the unreasonable category, unless I could prove that they were just really fast passes. But I'm not marathoning just for the sake of marathoning. And so if it stops being kind of a real world situation, then my thought is that I'll hang up the blade, or I guess it'll be time to flip it then and see. But before I use it on the second side, one thing I'm very curious about, I want to find somebody to send the blade to who has a very powerful microscope, so that we can just look and see how a blade looks. And there we go. It's not a crazy close shave. It's not baby butt smooth, but it's presentable in just about every job out there, and that's kind of my standard for closeness. Be curious to see how the edge looks. After all, I've shaved with it only on one side for so long. Does that mean that at the microscopic level, the edge has been kind of tilted in some way or worn down in some direction? I'd be curious about that. All right, get a good rinse now. Sometimes I'll take a break from this blade just to be able to use my other razors. I really enjoy a mild razor shave because if it's still a smooth and close cutting mild razor, then that's a wonderful combination. We're going to use the splash now. There are some people who are doing the Stag challenge where they have to increase the sprays of the EDP by a certain number. And I don't really do that because I don't want to waste the EDP. I actually enjoy it. That's good. That is just good. And then what I'm going to do is kind of let this settle in on my skin. And this is so old. that, oh no, they do list the ingredients on the border here of the label. We're talking, it's made in, this one was made in Rancho Cucamonga, California. It's so old that he may have moved his location since then. Chiseledface.com. Alcohol is the main ingredient. It does have witch hazel, aloe vera juice. It's got calendula. It's got a little bit of menthol, vitamin B5. And it's got astaxanthin. I don't know what that does, but it's really got kind of a small list of ingredients. So in terms of being good for your skin, it doesn't have a lot to mess around with you in a bad way. How much water did we use for that 20 seconds of loading? About 17 milliliters. And we will give the razor a good rinsing now and rinse out the bowl as well. Plenty of lather left. So I could reduce it maybe to 15 seconds next time. I mean, look at that. That's at least 2 passes of lather right there. So as the boar brush dries, it's not uncommon to have it shed every once in a while. And I'm not concerned with about any brush shedding less than 60 uses, because at the factory, when they put them together, they don't go through. They comb it out some, but there are some that are kind of loose in the knot, and they just eventually will come out. And I didn't have to pay to have them go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and so that's passing the savings on to me. I don't mind doing that myself. This is how it looks after a good shakeout in the sink, a good rinse and a shakeout. And this particular model here, the Owner's Club, is well known for its bloom once you get a good many uses on it, and a lot more of the bristles will kind of go out, kind of like these here. And I'm going to go drop it on the towel. And here's what it looks like after being towel stropped. And gently, I don't do vigorous like circular motions. I just kind of do up and down, and then I'll rotate the brush a little bit and then up and down, because too vigorous and you'll split those tips. So we're interested as it dries now, it will start to increase the splits in the individual tip fibers there, and that's what we want. All right, guys, I'm going to do a little bit more cleaning, packing up before I put on the EDP. I chose to have the markings point toward the handle just so that it would be easier to show the markings to the user while it was still in the top cap. And so I'm glad I did that from the beginning, because that's how I remember which way to orient the blade. And another secret to my marathon uses could be the fact that I dry the blade, just tapping it gently on a washcloth. I dry the blade after each use, and maybe that actually turns out to be a big deal, because perhaps we're removing corrosion or the potential for corrosion by doing that, and that could be significant. There was a group, I think MIT, that did a study about blades and how they, with plenty of microscopes involved, as the blade cuts through the hair, when this is a hair, the blade starts to cut it, and as it moves through it, the hair actually turns and twists. And of course, as the blade is halfway in it at the microscopic level, then that kind of wants to tweak the edge of the blade, and that's why you can get some chipping as the blade ages, and then of course it gets dull the more it chips. And so if they were in that kind of study, I wonder if they'd be curious about my blade here with so many uses. And so who knows, they're definitely I would assume they would be a trustworthy source. Maybe I would send my blade to them after it's time to flip it, after the use of side A is complete. Just drying off my razor parts here. And here's the cologne. I'll just do one smell there, and then I'll also kind of put it on my hands a little bit. I'll be able to enjoy that more. And that's it. All the best to you guys. Take care now. We'll see you next time. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. Take care.